welcome to Q&A, Questions Need Answers. I'm your host, James Munch II. Most people know me as Munch. And on this show, we talk about community culture and politics. And today, we creating a space for honest conversation, community dialogue, and critical thinking. And I have none other than candidate for Miami-Dade County Public Schools District 1, James Wright.
Yes, sir. Yes,
How
sir.
you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, man. I think you might be our first candidate for a school board that we've had on so far. So, I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better, and understanding, everything that, you've been about.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And let's get into it. So, I'll let you tell the people who you are, where you been, what's been going on, where you from, that sort of thing.
Wow. How much time do we have for the interview
we got some time, man. You've been sitting here. I got time. I can't have time for everybody else, and I ain't got time for you. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, you know what? I like to think of myself as a real simple guy, native Floridian, born and raised here. I grew up along with my older sister in the Alapata area. My parents bought a duplex on 41st Street and 14th Avenue. And from there, we moved to the Scott Lake area. And, just part of the community. I'm thinking about my life and had no real example in my life at the time. My mom was always kidding me about every birthday, every Christmas, every event. I needed to have a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and guns because I wanted to be a police officer. As far back as I can remember, about 4 years old, had nobody in my family, had nobody to really look up to. But at 4 years old, I knew that I wanted to be a police officer, which I ended up, in my career. Moved to the Scott Lake area. From there, my oldest sister wanted to be a chief, right? So what we actually did was we moved our address to live with my aunt who lived off of 185th Street and 32nd Avenue so she could go to Carroll City.
Yeah.
So actually prior to that, I was at Earleton Heights Elementary for kindergarten. Then we moved with my aunt, stayed with her throughout the week, and went home on the weekends. North Cal City Elementary, which is now Barbara Hawkins. From there, went to Scott Lake, Bunch Park, Parkway Middle, and then mighty Vikings, Norland. Okay. That's right.
I went to Norland Middle. I ain't go to Norland High, but I went to Norland Middle.
Well, we apologize for that. But yeah, so my life, took some turns. Back when I was in school, we had what we call a quinmaster program, and it allowed you to get credits toward graduation, so you graduate early. And by the time I got to 10th grade, I had DCT, which they call, work release. So I only had 4 classes. And then I went to work. I worked for actually one of the neighbors. His name was Frank Bembry. He owned Soul to Soul Record Shop in Carroll City, which is right next to what used to be the farm store right next to Popeyes off of 183rd.
Yeah.
And so I worked there. My oldest sibling worked there. He lived around the corner from us, and I would go to work there in the evening from 3 to 11. And then by the time that I reached 11th grade, I only had one class, which was a required science class. And I got up one morning and I said, I've got to get up 6 o'clock every morning, eat breakfast, get ready, walk to school, and then come home and then not go to work until 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the next 2 years. I said, I'm not doing this. And so 3 years into my junior year, I called up Lindsay Hopkins and I asked them when they were giving the GED test, right? So this is going to be a big shocker to a lot of the people that I grew up with, because they have often asked when they see me and we have get-togethers and we talk, the subject has come up. I don't even remember you graduating. What happened? Did you walk? Did you not walk? And really, up until this conversation, people really did not know that I did not graduate, because I ended up going to Lindsay Hopkins, right, and getting my GED, because it was a requirement for me to be a police officer, right? You either had to have a GED or a high school diploma. And so since that was my lifelong dream, I wasn't dropping out of school for nothing. I asked them when was the test. They gave me 3 dates. I took the one that was 3 months out, went and took the test, and really went on with my life. Had no desire for formal education after high school. It wasn't until I ended up getting on the police department, becoming a sergeant at Miami-Dade Police Department, which is a sheriff's office now, that supervisors began to look at me and say that we want to promote you, but you don't have a 4-year degree. And so raising a family at that time and being an adult, I went back to school, Barry University, got my bachelor's in public administration, was so excited about school at the time that I said, I'm here. So let's continue the program. Where's the master's program in public administration? And they said, well, we actually don't have one. You can do the MBA. Well, I was not very strong in math. As a matter of fact, I went to my counselor in math and I said, hey, dude, I'm trying to pass. I am not interested in algebra or anything else. What I need to know is that if I give somebody $20 and the cost of the goods that I'm purchasing, as an example, is $11.59, I need to know how much money I'm getting back, right? So I said, man, put me in consumer math. Let me learn about the gross domestic product and all of those things, and just kind of cruise through life. Finished my GED, continued working at the record shop, and was really bored there. As a matter of fact, what is funny is Wilbur T. Holloway was working for Bell South at the time, and he would hear records on the radio, and then he would come by and to the store and say, hey, do you all have this record? So that Frank Brimbury was an interesting individual, taught me all things about the business aspect of running the store, because he wasn't there all the time. So he was dependent upon me, making sure that people weren't taking advantage of me, and all of those things. Had to do record keeping, had to do inventory, all of these things, and got bored and said, well, shoot, I've got at least another year before I can apply to the police department, because you had to be 19. So I quit, and you living home with parents, you just chilling. My mom said, hey, what you doing? I said, nothing. She said, well, you're going to be doing something. You need a job. I said, okay. I went to, at the time, it was a Hess gas station on 202nd Street and 441. Worked on the night shift. Police officers from that jurisdiction began to come by, had conversations with them, and eventually, really got bored with that and stopped working again. My mom said, hey, this is not going to work. So I was explaining to her, hey, I'm waiting until I'm 19. Well, you need to do something before you reach that age. And my mom was a cosmetologist, right? Beautician, had her own shop on 59th Street and 17th Avenue. Ended up meeting the Range family and Hall Ferguson Hewitt, because what happened was the beauty salon was down the street, down the street. And so Ms. Range would have, some people may think this as gross, but I don't think so. She would have, clientele where their hair needed to be fixed. before the viewing for the family.
I've heard that before.
Yes,
Ain't too crazy.
And so my mom started there, and then she developed a relationship with Milton Hall Sr. And so she did work for them, and so she had regular clients. One of her clients who passed last year was the wife of Calvin Keel. Calvin Keel was at that time the kitchen manager for Joe Stone Restaurant. It wasn't the time that we live in now where you fill out an application, they give you an interview and all of this stuff. She called his wife, Carrie Keel, and said, my son needs a job. Ask Calvin if he has a job for him. Without question, Calvin told my mom he can start Wednesday. This was a Monday. So now my mom doing stuff for me, it's like, so she said, hey, call Calvin. He has a job for you. So he told me what day to start working, and I wasn't really feeling that. Told him I couldn't start on Wednesday, and we picked a date that I could start on. And that began my relationship with that establishment and with the Weiss family. I still periodically frequent the restaurant. Some of the people that I worked with in the kitchen still work there. Obviously, they have been promoted. I see the grandson of the founder and establisher from time to time. We cross paths, and just some good people. And so Calvin was, from the same cloth as my parents. One day I called in to work. I wasn't sick. I wasn't anything. I just called and say, hey, I'm not coming in. And for the next 2 weeks after I came to work, Calvin did not even speak to me. And I'm like, dude, what's up? I just come to work for one day. But what I didn't understand was his position as the kitchen manager, being a person of color, working in that kind of establishment, and the reputation that he had already made for himself. And after about the second week with me following him and saying, Calvin, man, what is wrong? I just didn't come to work for one day. And he stopped in his tracks. I'll never forget, we were in the kitchen. And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, if you can make it to the phone, you can make it to work. And from that point on, I never, ever called in sick while I worked at Joe's. And the reality is that was a principle that was established in my life, that I never, ever called in sick for any other job that I worked since then. What I would do, though, as time progressed, what I would take, I called them mental health days. And so eventually when I got hired on the police department, one of my field training officers told me not to take any time off until I accrued or built up my time in the county. And that's what I did. And so as a result of that, every year I was mandated to take a certain number of hours off so I wouldn't lose, because they called it use it or lose time. And so eventually over the span of my career at Miami-Dade, I progressed to the point where I had to take really months off at a time. I had built that much time up. And so incrementally what I do is I just pace it out over the year, and then I would take that time off.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey that you've had, you know what I'm saying, a number of jobs. So why the school board and why now?
That's an interesting question. And here's the answer to that. I'm going to answer the first one, why the school board. In 2008, I was the chief of police at the city of Opelika. Robert Ingram had died in office. I knew I worked with some of his family, at Miami-Dade Police Department. And then I understood that Charlie Crist, who was a governor at the time, would be making an appointment. And I was encouraged to apply. And so so a number of people applied. T. Holloway, who I'd known since 11th grade, was turned out. Me, him, and one other individual, I can't recall the lady's name, were the three finalists for appointment. Eventually, he ended up appointing T. Holloway,
yeah.
right? And so the question with respect to why the school board, actually, I had begun preparing for 2028 when I anticipated that the seat would become vacant. And rather than beginning to educate myself on education policy and those things surrounding education, rather than beginning to abreast myself the end of 2026, I said, you better start educating yourself now. And I did, beginning in January. And so the school board, in a number of instances, as you and others have discovered, that we are really at a critical point in a number of issues. And I believe that my experiences over the course of my life and my perspectives lends the kind of executive leadership that I believe that the school board would benefit from. People say, when I am engaging them in conversation, what is sometimes asked is, you don't have an education background. And then my response is, well, I have two children, right? And so I've educated them. They are products of the public school system. I'm a product of the public school system. My parents espoused education. I had teachers who poured into me, and really the community helped shape the man that I am and who I've become, as well as my perspective and my experiences. And so I often tell people that when you go to the hospital and you may not pay attention and you look at the board of directors or the trustees, not everybody that is pictured is a doctor or a nurse. Because why? You need people with business acumen. You need people with procurement experience. Certainly you need people with education experience, because while you are voting and making policy on education, it is not the singular thing that the board will be voting on, and things that will come up with respect to the board. And so I believe that my experiences beginning with my law enforcement career as a police officer, working my way up to police lieutenant, then becoming a police chief at the city of Opelika, becoming the city manager, owning my own small business. And what a lot of people really don't know is that for 13 years, I sat as an arbitrator with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, where I chaired arbitration panels, and I chaired Title VII statutory employment-related claims issues, age discrimination, race discrimination, ERISA claims, all of these things involving the security industry. So I bring, in addition to, my profession, my service on a number of community-based organizations. Let's just begin with, I just ended a term at the beginning of the year with the Miami-Dade Economic Advisory Trust. Was appointed originally 2018, sat on the what we call the EDAC committee, dealing with housing issues and education, the youth, and all of those sorts of things. And so, in addition to my profession, the wealth of knowledge I believe I bring by having been appointed to boards on a local basis, the state and the federal level. Currently, I am in my second and final term on what we call the PIRSAC committee. It's the Private Investigation, Recovery, and Security Advisory Council for the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Was originally appointed by Commissioner Freed, reappointed by a Republican commissioner, in which Commissioner Simpson, in which I'm in my final term. So many years ago, when I was on the police department as a sergeant, there were the IRS had a number of issues with the Secretary of Treasury. There were some issues with the IRS, the image that they were portraying to the public, and all of those sorts of issues. They were trying to improve the image of the Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to start what they called a CAP, Citizens Advisory Program for the IRS. They've later changed the name to TAP. Of 1,100 Floridians, because they began in Florida, of 1,100 Floridians that applied to be a part of that program, there were only 11 Floridians that were selected and nominated to fulfill that. I actually fulfilled a 2.5-year term. So went around the country, appeared before Congress, dealing with issues and communicating with the IRS, having conversations with the Secretary of Treasury, the Commissioner of the Treasury, and we had speaking engagements all across Florida and Washington, D.C., informing them on how to make policy decisions relating to the Internal Revenue Service and with respect to their customer service aspect, which kind of brings me up to the Miami-Dade School Board. If you look at it from a business aspect, I think the problem is customer service, right? Mm-hmm. And so my communication to voters and the people that I'm connecting with, whether it's parents, whether it's students, and let me tell you this, children know how to advocate for themselves. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a mother, and her daughter was standing, and she was listening to the conversation about why I'm running. And this young lady said, I go to Matty Ives, and I don't like the fact that I have to wear khaki pants. If you win, can you commit to me that you'll change that? Yeah. And so I said, let me get in the seat first, and we'll have that discussion. But I think part of the issue is customer service. You know, when parents call, can they communicate with the school board through the parent portal? Is there a communication gap? If they call for a need, does somebody pick up the telephone? And so I've often said that me being a small business owner, I'm making sure that I'm providing my clients with the return on investment, the value of service that I'm providing, and really trying to do the best and provide what we call white glove service, so that I am the first choice that they come to for their security needs. Like the school board, parents have choices, right? Whether it's public school, whether it's private, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's charter, whether it's voucher, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But the question I say is, if I am a business owner and I'm providing a service to my clients that they are considering me to be their first choice, then why can't Miami-Dade public schools do the same? Do you know, or would you be surprised that Broward County is, I'm going to use the word poaching, Dade parents and students?
I can believe it.
Because what they're doing is they're saying, hey, listen, if you are dissatisfied with the public school system in Dade, here are our schools, right? Your child may need a physical exam, but here's your choices. We'll accept you if Miami-Dade County Public Schools is not your schools of choice. So I think for a number of reasons, we've got to get back to that, find out why that is occurring, why teachers are leaving. When I'm talking to teachers, they often talk to me about pay, right? What I think people don't understand is that a potential board member, my job is to ask probative questions, ask the right questions, and making sure that the superintendent has provided us enough information to make a decision. Mm-hmm. So when you tell me that you love teaching, but pay is an issue, my question or my retort to you is, who is responsible for your pay, for your salary and your benefits, regardless of whether you're a part of the union or not? That's a union responsibility, right? I understand that we voted for this 1 meal thing to pay an incentive for incoming teachers, and also a supplement for teachers that are currently there. But that is additional dollars. What happens if the voters decide that in November, they say, well, we're not going to vote for this anymore? Then there's going to have to be some decisions at the school board, for us to make when and if I'm elected to the school board. But this is a critical time for public education. Public education has always been under assault. You heard a conversation about a private school, Jackson Toddler Inn. Mm-hmm. Right. My oldest sister and I, there's 5 years difference between us. And I have a younger sibling. There's a 10-year age difference. But my sister attended Jackson Toddler Inn. As a matter of fact, it was right around the corner from where my mom grew up on 49th Street and 29th Avenue. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I heard Jackson Toddler Inn, and then you said something earlier about North Carolina City. And it was last week I heard North Carolina City, and I was like,
yes,
North Carolina City.
Yeah.
And then when you just made the connection when you said Barbara Hawkins.
Exactly. That's what it is now.
Yeah. So in addition to, the school side, and the business, you talk about customer service.
Sure.
There's also a side that deals with the business of the school board when we talk about like procurement, right? And 2%, I think I don't want to say we've been getting 2%, but we haven't been getting, for lack of better terms, I feel like our fair share of the contracting, right? And part of that I feel like is us being ready, right? But then the other part of it is, the things that's put in place, the mandates or whatever that's put in place for us to be able to bid on these contracts. So can you expound on what you look forward to in that aspect?
That's a great question, because in the entire conversation, not today, but conversations that we've been having, people never look at or study the fact that 96% of the budget goes toward running the district, right? Or cafeteria workers, bus drivers, custodians, all of those things, teachers, administrators. So if 96% goes toward operations, then you have 4% that goes to goods and services. And to your point, I believe it's twofold. It is not necessarily being ready, and the other instance is not being educated. And so let me kind of lay this foundation. So I have a security company, and 3/4 of my portfolio is in the Motion Picture Association space. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I do anti-piracy for the Motion Picture Association. All of them, some additional clients that I have is Apple TV, Amazon, things of that nature. Very highly competitive industry. In addition to anti-piracy, I do executive protection for movie talent that comes along with red carpet events and movie premieres and all of those things. So where I am now, my intention is to grow my company, right? And how do you grow your company? The federal government, as a school board, or many other governmental agencies, municipalities, have a portion of procurement where it just makes sense for us to outsource this rather than for us to do it, ourselves. And so what I've learned in trying to make the step from where I am to the federal procurement space, because you say, well, why the federal procurement space? Well, because their contracts are normally longer, yeah. Right? Yeah. You have a lot more cheese involved, right? A lot more cheddar. Whether you want cheddar, whether you want mixed
goat cheese,
hey, it's a lot of cheese in the federal government.
Mozzarella.
And so what I've learned is what is important for you to be a prime on a federal contract is you need to have past performance. And so what I've done is a friend of mine who has been in the industry 30 years, much longer than I've been in business, has federal procurement contracting experience. And so what we've agreed to is that I would look for contracts that he might be interested in and that I would come on, I'd write the contract, right? We discuss pricing and all of those things. And I would do all the footwork, right? Because he doesn't really need me. He's helping me out. He's doing $30 million a year, right? So he doesn't really need me. So the concept is that I would, once we land a contract, I would become a subcontractor. He would give me a portion of the contract. I would gain performance data and then eventually have enough past performance, to eventually bid on a prime contract myself without his experience. And so when I hear Miami-Dade County and the Miami-Dade County Public School talk about how many certified firms we have, I am not really interested in that. What I'm interested in, of the certified firms that you have, how many have current contracts and how much are they making? And do you have a ceiling? So for instance, Miami-Dade County, you graduate out of their program if you end up making over $5 million a year, right? We have not entered into that space. And so what I'd be interested in is not necessarily certifications are good because you need them, right? But also educating contractors and having a mentoring program where that we can pair individuals with firms who are already certified, already have contracts with the school board, with Miami-Dade County, that we could develop relationships with them, almost like an apprenticeship. And then so you can get your past performance, you understand the mechanics of what needs to be done, the proper licensing, financing, all of those things, and then eventually get into the program. And I'd like to see small businesses eventually graduate out of the program. That's what I'd like to see. But what I often hear more than anything else is the number of certified firms rather than the number of people that we have had on contracts with the school board. My platform, if you will, obviously with my background is student safety. If students, and that's both internally and externally, right? Nobody wants to be thinking about when I drop my child off to school, am I going to get a phone call to come to a media staging area because there have been a shooting or an assault or these kinds of things, but also from the standpoint of protecting them from predatory teachers, both male and female. So if they don't believe that they are in a safe environment, and there's a difference between having a sense of safety in a place and feeling safe, right? They can't be successful. They can't exceed. And then if the environment is conducive to learning and is successful, we want to make sure that they graduate with not just a high school diploma, that they have life skills, regardless to what decision they want to make, that is going to college, that is going to a technical school, that is becoming an apprentice in a trade or those types of things, or ending up, regardless of what path that they choose. And so when people talk about students, the concept is really students, regular students. You don't hear a lot of conversation about ESC. You don't hear a lot of conversation of children that have disabilities. You probably are not going to even have conversations about children that are homeless in the system. Many years ago, I was dating this young lady, and as we began to get to know each other, she told me that she was homeless during her graduation year. Mom got kicked out. They were living in the car, and I couldn't even imagine trying to concentrate on finishing school and being homeless at the same time. And so my focus is on traditional and non-traditional students. I love the program that the school has, specifically with kids, children on the spectrum, where they have work almost like DCT, on the job experience, with Publix and other organizations and institutions. But getting back, that procurement piece is it's a piece that nobody has been looking at, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really over disparity studies, right?
Me and you both.
I'm over them.
Because I feel like the disparity studies are done, they get put out, and then nothing comes of them.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like no action, no implementation of the disparity.
Right. And is it a good expense, or what's the value of paying a firm $200,000 to do a disparity study that we already know disparity exists?
Yeah.
Let's identify
year after year.
Year after year. Okay, so we're up again for our 10-year disparities. So what has changed from the last one? What are the mechanics? Back to your question in our conversation. How are we improving the mechanics of these small local businesses, right? How are they into the system, and what are we doing to assist them in graduating out of that system? Because we don't want you to, the other side of the coin is we don't want you to be in the system forever, right? It is a way of scaling, your business. And so even to the point of, the black media, we have the Miami Times, we have, high and low news. We have there are a couple of other media outlets out there. But what is a
legacy?
Yes, and so how much of those advertising dollars are going to some of these local medias that could also be growing their business? Because for a number of contracts and a number of things that are occurring, there's a requirement for those things to be published, in the media. So why can't we use the local media? Not only black-owned media, but
Hispanic-owned media. It just minority media in general.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm all for that.
Yes,
you know
we can be using those.
Because I have a theory. The government puts forth the least amount of effort to make sure that the people know what's really going on.
But the other side of that coin is also that we have a responsibility too. And I'm not defending the media. Trust me. I learned very early on that they exist to a large degree to influence public opinion. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so I give you a classic example. I'm not sure if you remember this, but part of the Miami Herald, they used to have, depending upon where you live, they had the neighbors section.
Yes.
And so I became the chief of police, and every Thursday and every Sunday, my mom is pounding me. You became the chief police in the city of Opelika. And every time that I open the neighbor section, they have a long list of crimes that are occurring in Opelika. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so,
as if it's not going down in Coral Springs every week.
So,
in Pinecrest.
So what happened was she made me pay attention. And so then I went to the records clerk and I said, hey, I have a question. How is the media getting all of this information about what's happening in the city? And the clerk told me, oh, well, when they come here for the Herald, I just hand them a stack of reports. I said, you do what? She said, I just hand them a stack of reports that were written. They go through them and then they give them back and that's it. So I said, okay. I said, next week when they come, here's what you're going to do. I know we're doing an interview, but I'm going to spill the beans. I said, this is what you're going to do. You are going to look for menial reports. Somebody lost their keys. They lost their cell phone. Someone broke into the shed and took a rake and a shovel.
Yeah.
The lowest that you can find. And you're going to provide them with about 7 of those reports. And the following week, I looked in the paper. All 7 reports were in there. The following week, I said, what you're going to do is you're going to give them only 5 reports. I look in the newspaper, what happens? There are 5 reports. Yeah. I said the next week and the following weeks that they come, you're going to give them 3 reports. Because when I began to look at what they were reporting in other cities compared to crimes that they say were occurring in the city of Opelika, the list was this long and other cities was this long. And so
based on what you give them.
Based on what you give them. So that's what I did. And so we got the reports maybe down to 3 or 2. And eventually what happened is they stopped coming. What I did was the director of the editorial page, I asked them, I said, I know you have to write news, but you never come to write about the positive things that we're doing. You know what the response was? I don't have enough reporters for that. But if you had something occurring of positive nature in the city of Opelika, I would allow you to write your own press release, make sure you take pictures, send them to me, and we publish them. And that's the relationship that I established with the Herald.
That's usually how it goes.
And that's what worked for us.
And I think what differs with Black media and just having a conversation, I think what differs for somebody like myself, we focus on access.
Sure.
But, you know what I'm saying? Just solely access. Like, let's just put it out there. And we believe in telling the positive stories because we done heard the negative stories. Like, their job is the big companies do that. And so I think with different media companies, it's finding out what their aim is, what their angle is. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
And so back to the school board, talking about media and reports, we had all these reports about grades, right? And overall, we may be grade-wise a B, right? But when you look at and you break down the data in the individual schools or in your district, the literacy rates across the board in the inner city schools are lower than everywhere else. So, those are things that, we got to start looking into. So what's your plan with that?
You've done your homework.
Oh yeah, always.
I should be over there and you should be over here.
Hey man, I got to. I mean, I'm co-owner of the bookstore, right?
Yes.
But also one of the other co-owners is the assistant principal.
Okay.
So we talk about these things all the time.
Okay.
And you should come in here on a regular Tuesday, Wednesday, you have other educators who, especially during the summer,
Okay.
they sit right in here and we having these conversations.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'll
about
be back.
literacy. Yeah.
But to your point, let me answer your question. So the deal is that the district, for the last 7 consecutive years, the district overall has been, to your point, has been listed as an A school.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, I looked at data for the last 3 years, right? For schools in District 1. And as you said, they are lower than the state assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at another district. I went to another member's district meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Just popped in, not a candidate. They didn't know who I was. Just popped in, right? Maybe the only raisin in a bowl of cornflakes. And there's one other raisin in there. And I was listening to the conversation. And I'm looking at the data. And the data in this particular district, that they far exceeded by a number of points the state assessment. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm looking in the room and I'm looking at who is in the room,
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is interesting. This is something that I intend to duplicate when elected. So when I looked at the data of District 1 schools over the last 3 years, here's what I said to myself. Of the 8 C schools that we have in the district, I want to know, have they consistently been stagnant at C schools? Did they drop from a B to a C? Of schools of the same size in the district that are A and B, what are they doing in those other schools that we could those successes that we could replicate in those C schools? In addition to that, what is this other district doing that we could also replicate or use as best practices, right? And not only use that for District 1, but that we could use to scale for the entire district, right? Because they're doing something in that particular district that's not happening in our district. And what you will come to learn and what voters will come to learn is, in order for me to make informed policy decisions, I rely heavy on data.
Mm-hmm.
I rely heavy on data. And the police department taught me this. I could not determine if there was a crime trend or a crime spree occurring without the data.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm always looking at data, and data is going to tell us what we need to know. So what's occurring in these schools? Is it lack of parental involvement? Is it leadership? Because I'm a firm believer that John Maxwell says that everything rises and falls on leadership. Mm-hmm. And so I look from this perspective as to principals to be the leaders, to set the tone, the curriculum, if you will, and the vision for their many houses. Mm-hmm. Right? They're the many chiefs. They set the tone from appearance to culture, everything. How can one particular principal come into a C school and in the first year make it an A school? Mm-hmm. Leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership. So it may mean that we may need to look and have a conversation with not only the superintendent, but I plan to meet with every single principal. Plan to visit every single school. Make an assessment. What kind of assessment? You don't get a second opportunity to make a first impression. When I was the interim city manager, one of my bosses who works in the school system said that the school that she was working at was kind of disheveled. And it had been painted, hadn't been pressure washed. And she called me, not as a boss, but as a representative of the school system. And so the question, while I resolved that issue for that individual, my question becomes, how are you working in the school system, right? And either the principal is not aware of how to resolve these issues, pressure washing, painting, all of those things, which leads me back to, one of the issues is the school board has a $65 million deferred maintenance program. I expect to, get a priority list from the superintendent, particularly about schools in District 1. What's the priority? What are the issues, and how are we going to resolve these issues on a fast track, basis? Because appearance is important. Now, I think it sets the culture for learning. And so I'm going to always rely on the data because the data is going to tell me what questions I have to ask, what decisions we need to make as a board, and what direction or resolutions or items that I need to bring to the board for discussion to direct the superintendent.
Okay. What's your thoughts on a lot of these decisions that's being made by the state right now and how it's affecting the school board? How do you plan to kind of with other members of the board, of course, to kind of circumvent those issues?
Well,
or mitigate them?
I want to make sure, relying on my background as a police officer, looking at the entire system, that I was once in a position of enforcing the law, right? Which means that I'm not looking to break the law, because there are some established laws that have been set by the legislature that I can't do anything about. The school board has a intergovernmental component, and through that intergovernmental component, the school board has lobbyists. They lobby the federal government. They lobby the members of the state legislature. And one of the most important things that I like is so that we can speak as one voice. Normally, what ends up happening is the legislative decisions or priorities for the school board are normally adopted by the Miami-Dade County Commission. Because if you know or not, there is a portion, and I love that the way that this works. I'm not sure why it doesn't work all the time, but you have what we call the Miami-Dade Miami-Dade delegation. It is a representative of both Democratic and Republican Miami-Dade legislators that lobby, that understand that whether you're Democrat or Republican in Miami-Dade County, we're all concerned about the same issues. So let's discuss those issues that affect us at home. Let's have one voice and articulate those to our colleagues in the state legislature. And so the Miami-Dade School Board adopts legislative priorities, and then they direct basically the superintendent and the administration, to carry those out. Miami-Dade County Commission normally adopts those. And so what you eventually have is the Miami-Dade County Commission and the Miami-Dade School Board having one voice with respect to legislative priorities. And so I don't have a problem with lobbying certain members of the Florida legislature, particularly those on the part of the school, not school board, but education committee. The chairs, vice chairs, those people. Senator Chevron Jones was on one of the committees. Senator Rosalind Osgood, who I have a relationship with, is on one of the committees. And then Representative Rizzo, who I understand through the meeting I attended in another district, was able to successfully bring approximately $18.7 million back to the Miami-Dade School Board from Tallahassee. So those are the types of relationships that I intend to continue to develop and forge. And also, I'll say this. There are some laws on the book that, while they may be laws on the book, the board will have to make a determination if there are some laws that they want to take to task with by directing the school board attorney or some outside counsel with respect to these things. I recently heard that there are some teachers who got together that are going to file, either are in the process of filing or will file a lawsuit with respect to funding issues. I don't know where that is. I don't know who the leaders are. But from a legislative process, we make decisions, by majority vote. And with respect to some laws that may be on the book, it determines what appetite the board members may have with respect to, this is unfair, let's push it. And I'll give you a classic example, because I'm non-confrontational until I need to be confrontational. A few years ago, I was running for public office and ended up being disqualified from running the race because there was a certain law on the book. Mm-hmm. And I didn't agree with that. Mm-hmm. And I thought the law was unfair. And I spent my own money taking that case up to the Florida Supreme Court, who ended up ruling in my favor. Overturned the election that occurred and ordered a new election. And so my case against that particular municipality really reset the topography of election laws in the state of Florida in 2016. James Wright.
What was that? You gotta go in depth. You can't just put it out there and not say it. How you just gonna put it out there and not say it, man? What's wrong with this guy, man?
So in 2016, I ran for mayor of Miami Gardens.
Okay.
And I ran on the premise that crime was out of control. And with my background, I thought and I believed that I was in a position to do more about the crime affecting not only the residents, the economics in the city, and the fact that it had cast a negative pallor over the community I grew up in, that at the time was unincorporated Dade County. And so I put forth my name as a candidate. Went to the bank, opened up an account at Wells Fargo. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to infer anything. It was the same branch that the city of Miami Gardens banked at. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks after qualifying, the clerk called me and said that the bank returned your check. For what reason? There was 3 times the amount of money in the account to cover the fee for qualifying. Mm. Oh, the bank said that they couldn't locate your account. Mm. I said, a check that I presented that had my name on it, the routing number of the bank, and the bank account number, that the bank couldn't find the account.
Yeah.
And so initially she said, okay, well, just bring in a new check and bring in a new check for the qualifying fee and the return check fee. Probably about 30 minutes later, I get an email that I was disqualified.
Mm.
And I said, well, things like this happen. Don't worry about it. But it just kept bothering me. And I made a couple of phone calls, and I called my childhood friend. We had been friends since the 6th grade. It was actually a pastor of the church that we grew up in Opelika, in the Triangle. He's an attorney. Had no knowledge of election laws, but I understood his legal mindset, and I looked at the statute from a business standpoint, and I said, Jason will be able to untangle this. And I called him, and he said, he looked at he looked at the statute, and he said, Are you willing to go all the way? I said, yeah. In my mind, this is going to be resolved at the 11th Circuit. Yeah, and then I'll be back on the ballot. And so I thought, pay him $10,000, $15,000 back on the ballot, no big deal. Eventually I eventually sued the city of Miami Gardens, supervisory of elections, and Miami-Dade County.
Mm.
Case went to the 11th Circuit. The judge, who now sits on the 3rd DCA, ruled against us. He said, what are you going to do? I said, we're going to the 3rd DCA. He says, I don't do appellate work. I said, as long as you've been in practice, you mentor somebody, you better find somebody for my case and work out a flat fee for them to do the paperwork. I got an attorney, filed the motion for the 3rd DCA, and the 3rd DCA said, we agree with the lower court, but we don't believe that this is right. And so they opened the door for the Florida Supreme Court to accept my case. Mm. And what was fascinating about this case is there was another case similar to mine previously. And I called a friend and I said, I need somebody to write a case for the Florida Supreme Court to hear. She says, I'll call you back in an hour. Got the retired judge who ruled against a previous plaintiff in a case before mine that was similar. And I got her to write the case for me. The Florida Supreme Court accepted that. Election came. Mm-hmm. Up to the election, people are calling me every day. What is the Florida Supreme Court doing? I say, I have absolutely no idea. They accepted jurisdiction and they took the case. The election happened August 30th. People are still calling me. You haven't heard from the Florida? I said, I haven't heard anything. And I happened to be driving in my car on September 16th, 2016. And my attorney called me and said, why didn't you call me? I said, call you about what? He said, I just got notice that the Florida Supreme Court ruled in your favor, overturned the election and required the city to put your name on the ballot, to say that to keep your name off the ballot was unconstitutional. So I only bring that case up because while there may be cases on the book that the Florida legislature has set and the governor has signed, I believe that there are some instances that are worthy of a fight. And it all depends on your appetite. I was not able to campaign during the 3 months that my case was working its way through the court system. There's absolutely no way you can make that up. In about 3 months, the election was set for November. I ended up with 20% of the overall vote. The mayor at the time won re-election, And I'm not a career politician. I'm intentional about life. I'm intentional about things that I do. And I just made a decision that I was going to wait for the appropriate time where I could do the greatest good, provide the most value, provide the return on investment to voters for a particular seat that matched what I wanted to do and my passion. So as I told you before, I'd begun preparing for 2028. The seat opened up before that, and here we are.
So look into this camera and tell the people why you are the best. You should tell the people why they should vote for you.
Here's the reason why I'm asking for your trust and your confidence. It really is not about the positions or the titles that I've held previously. It is about making the single most important investment that I think we can make, and that is in the lives of our children who are future leaders. There's a lot at stake, and irrespective of whether you have children in the school system, you have grandchildren in the school system, whether your children or grandchildren are in private school or even a charter school, or they have vouchers, or you're an empty nester, you are still a steward and you pay taxes toward the Miami-Dade County School Board, and you fuel public education. I am the candidate that will ensure that I will operate and be transparent and make sure that the Miami-Dade County School Board, as a single member, that they're responsive to your needs, that they hear you, that your needs in making Miami-Dade County Public Schools your first choice and that of your families is paramount. It is important to me. It should be equally important to you. On the upcoming election, I ask humbly and sincerely for your vote. James Wright, 156. Let's make this right together.
Boom, bingo, got him. So y'all heard it here first on Q&A. James Wright for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, District 1. All right. If you haven't already, follow, like, and subscribe on our YouTube. Q&A, questions need answers. We also have a Facebook. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Q&A, question need answers. So check us out. Follow, like, and subscribe. I see y'all for the next one. Peace.
Thank you.